What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for the match preview. It is Brighton against Tottenham at the Amex, 4:30 kickoff on Sunday, which is a game that is most definitely going to promise goals. They're dubbing this as the Highline Derby, apparently. That's what I've been told. And look, it's going to be a great game of football, no matter what, in my opinion. Spurs coming into this in high-flying form. Brighton, on the other hand, they've kind of, I wouldn't say they've hit bad form, but they're not getting maybe the results that they were getting at the beginning of the season. You're looking at their 4-2 loss last time out against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, 2-2 against high-flying Nottingham Forest, 0-0 against Ipswich, and 1-1, which was actually a good result at the Emirates against 10-man Arsenal. Spurs, on the other hand, obviously with brilliant form, 5 wins in the last 5 in all competitions. How do you assess kind of Brighton's form coming into this? Because obviously they started off unbelievably under Hurzeler. They haven't been getting the results in the last few games, but their performances have still been there, haven't they?
Yeah, and they've obviously got an identity. They've followed on from, Graham Potter and De Zerbi, very much front foot football, commit a lot of risk, try and get the ball into the opposition's half, high pressing, high line. I feel like the way De Zerbi, the way he played when he was Brighton manager, I feel like he was much more focused on baiting the opposition into pressing so he could hit them in transitions. Obviously, they did like to have possession. They were very much a side who liked to dominate, liked to be on the front foot. But I always felt like De Zerbi's side were always at their best when they had teams, trying to press them, trying to kind of force mistakes. And I felt like when they came up against like low block teams, they would struggle a bit more. Fabian Hurzeler's side, a bit more, less about transitions, more about being on the front foot, more about playing in the opposition's half, and they play in a madly aggressive high line, which I actually felt like De Zerbi's side would drop back a bit and try and bait the opposition, whereas Hurzeler's side is ridiculously high line, a bit similar to Spurs, literally all the defenders on the halfway line or near so, and trying to catch the opposition offside, and that's how they try and kind of defend. And they had, obviously, in the beginning of the season, were getting a lot of joy, albeit when you think back to that Everton game, they won the game 3-0, but Everton, how many chances they had? A lot of chances. They beat Man United fairly comfortably at home, but since then they haven't won since August. They didn't win any of the games in September. Obviously, they did get a good draw away at Arsenal, but when it was 11-11, Arsenal were very much in control of that game before Brighton came back into it. Did fail to beat Ipswich at home. In fact, it was 0-0. They couldn't score a goal. And against Forest, we were watching that game. Yes, Brighton played quite well, but again, how many chances did Forest have in that game? And even with 10 men, Forest could have won it. I remember late on they had chances in behind. And obviously last week, they finally got exploited badly against Chelsea, and Chelsea were ruthless in how they exploited that high line. If you watch the highlights of that game, time and time again, they just didn't even think twice about it. Just over the top. Jackson in behind, Palmer in behind. They didn't think twice about getting that ball into that space, and Brighton couldn't live with it. But you also look at that game, and Brighton had their own chances. They're very good going forward. They've got a wealth of talent going forward, and Welbeck started the season really well. They're integrating people like Rutter into the team. But then again, looking at the goals they scored, if it wasn't for some really horrible mistakes from Sanchez, maybe they wouldn't have got the joy they did. So they did have to rely on some really bad mistakes that came from their own high pressing. So I think it's been a good start, considering, look, Brighton are a team you don't really expect them to be challenging for Europe. If they do, it's a good surprise, and they've done very well. They obviously, was it last year they're in Europe or the year before? I think last year they're in Europe. They did quite well. So obviously Hertz's job is to kind of maintain what Potter and De Zerbi have been doing, kind of outside gut shot of challenging for Europe, but being in mid-table, being nowhere near the relegation fight essentially, and trying to get them back into Europe. And I think he's done okay. I think obviously Brighton have a certain manager they go for, don't they? They have a certain way of playing that the club, there's a really good holistic approach, from the top down. Everyone knows what they're looking for when it comes to managers, players, and all that kind of stuff, and that stands them in good stead. And obviously their recruitment has been fantastic. I actually think they're one of the highest spending teams in summer. It goes to show that they're willing to up the quality of the team when they can do, and they've signed some really good players. But I think Hurzeler's kind of maybe got some teething problems at the moment with how the team are operating. But it's not like these results are crazy for a team like Brighton, are they? You expect them to go through these periods, so it's not a massive surprise. But we know it's going to be a very tough game because they're a very good team on the ball, very aggressive, high pressing. And I know we had a lot of injuries last year, and I know it's a different manager, but we got battered last year away from home. We were 4-0 down, and then only a couple of late goals that saved the scoreline from being too embarrassing. So it's definitely going to be a tough game, but it's also a game where I feel like Ange will be, if they continue to play like they did against Chelsea, we will be licking our lips thinking if they play like that, we'll definitely have the players that can hurt them in behind.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because it's like going to be a real battle for possession. Like Enzo Maresca teams in Chelsea, they like to, control the game and control the possession as well. But at Stamford Bridge, in a game where they lost 4-2, they still had 60% possession or 59% possession, which was, Chelsea kind of gave them the ball and just said, all right, we're just going to hit you in the transition here. We're going to go over the top. We're going to catch your high line out. And that's exactly what they did. So, and Ange team, maybe we will do that because we kind of did concede possession to Brentford in that game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at certain times. Maybe that's the game plan going into it this weekend. Let Brighton have that possession and let's catch them out in the transitions.
I mean, definitely we've shown an ability to do that. I think against Brentford aren't the kind of team that if we wanted to dominate, we could dominate. You get that feeling. So the fact that we didn't and the fact that we had less possession tells me that was a specific game plan on that day to be a bit more transitional, just to make sure there's more spaces for us to play in. And obviously Son and Johnson completely ran riot, and so did the guys, Maddison, Kulusevski in the centre. So against Brighton, they're a team who definitely like to keep possession. They're a team who want to dominate, and I feel like if they do that and they squeeze the pitch up, if Tottenham can win the ball back like we are very good at doing, we're one of the best pressing teams. We're very good at winning the ball back in specific areas. If we win the ball back in those areas, we can definitely think about hitting that space very early with the pace of Johnson, pace potentially Timo Werner as well in behind. And also Solanke, who's got underrated pace, and I think he clocked one of the highest speeds last year as well. I think those are players I'm looking at could definitely hurt them in behind if we get the timing of the pass right. And when you got people like Maddison in your midfield, you got people like Porro in the back line, you got Romero. These are very good passers of the ball, and if they get any sort of time, they can definitely be picking up those passes. So I think we should be excited about that prospect. But look, the forward line, they've got people like Matoma, He's dead. He can rip you apart on those wings if you give him space and you allow him to run at you. He can be extremely effective. They got really good players like Welbeck started the season really well. He's always a player, whatever you want to say about his scoring record, whatever. He's a player who always gives you trouble. He was always a nuisance.
4 goal contributions so far this season for Welbeck. Mm-hmm. He literally has started the season.
I feel like he always has a good August though.
Yeah, maybe. Is he one of those players that just smashes out
every year?
August?
He seems to have a great August and then it kind of reverts. But
still, 3 goals so far in 6 games is nothing to be sniffed at.
He's a good player. That's what I'm trying to say. Even if he's not scoring, he's always giving you problems. He's always a physical threat in behind. He's always he's always winning free kicks, causing you problems. So these are good players. I really like Matt Weaver in the centre. I think he had a good start for Brighton, then he got injured, but I think he's a really combative midfielder and with a good technical ability as well. He's one we've really got to be careful of.
You wanted him at Spurs.
I did. I like him. I like him a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised in a year or two if he's going to a big club because he's that kind of. I think he's that kind of talent, and I think he's at the right club for it, to be honest. So I think he's one to be really wary of.
Carlos Baleba as well. He's gone a bit under the radar. No one's really talking about him, but he looks really impressive.
Yeah, really. So strong in the middle, but also got a few goals as well. He got a goal against Chelsea last week from a mistake. He's been contributing.
In the cup as well.
Got a goal in the cup. He's also another one similar to maybe like Caicedo and other midfielders that they've had last few years. Similar mould, and obviously their recruitment has identified him as someone who can fill their shoes, and he started the season really well. So very, very impressed with him.
Kadioglu as well at right back. I think he's been pretty impressive so far in the game time that he has had. But when I'm looking at Brighton and I'm looking at the tactics they deploy about them playing that super high line, a bit similar to the way we play, I'm looking at the 2 centre-backs in Webster and Dunk. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're not really players that you want in that kind of high line.
Yeah, I wonder if they've do they have any other centre backs? Because sorry, they do. So Van Hecker is a big part for me. How
he's
they
missing,
play.
Isn't he?
That's the thing. Yeah. He's injured. I think he's not going to be playing, and I think he's crucial to that high line. Similar to Van de Ven with us, he's tall. He's really good on the ball, but actually he's got his underrated pace for a tall defender. And I feel like when he's playing, their backline is a lot more efficient. And when he's not playing, you saw how they just got absolutely destroyed last week, and they didn't have Van Hecker against Chelsea. They just, as I say, they went in behind every time. They just couldn't catch up with the Chelsea attackers, and they were found wanting. And I feel like if it's going to be a battle of the high lines, if it's going to be we go over the top, they go over the top kind of thing, because we know that we're going to play high probably. When we have Van der Ven Romero there, and they've got Duncan Webster, who do I back to deal with those situations more? I know Doggy as well, who's good at covering. Who do I back in those situations? I think our defenders will be able to sweep up a lot more than them, and that could be kind of the gamble that we play. It could be a bit of a gamble. We go high, they go high, and who can basically finish their chances, who can create more. And if we do that, if it comes into a game like that, I think we would come out on top.
The thing is, though, like Fabian Hurzeler, youngest manager in the league, but I feel like he's a very smart manager. He definitely knows what he's doing. He's shown it in his previous job, but I feel like we are catching Brighton a bit at a really good time, because it's like the early tenure of Hurzeler. He wants to imprint his philosophy into this squad, a bit like clockwork. So I don't think he's going to stray away from his kind of tactics and his philosophy. However, he did see how he got outdone at Chelsea last week, and quite easily. So me personally, I don't think he's going to stray away from it, even though he does maybe smell the warning signs coming up against this Spurs team. But do you feel like he could make a few adjustments coming into this, knowing what this Tottenham team's about?
It depends what he's looking for. Usually Brighton managers, from what I've seen, from like Potter and De Zerbi, they play their way. It doesn't matter who they're playing against, and usually because the way they play is quite effective going forward, and it gives them patterns of play and stuff like that. They usually beat a lot of the bottom teams, and they do struggle. So, but they can go toe to toe with some of the top teams as well. But what I'm trying to say is, they like to build a structure, and they like to stick to that. I think Brighton like managers like that, who want to build something rather than adjust just to try and get short-term results. And yes, if Hertz is looking for a short-term result, then he could well adjust a few things and make some changes. But if he's trying to build a structure and a way of playing for this Brighton team, and he wants them to stick to it for the long term, these early stages are about them learning how to do that, and just changing it based on results is going to. You've seen how managers like Ten Hag have struggled with trying to adapt, playing this like adaptive philosophy where they change for depending on who they're playing, and sometimes it leads to your team lacking an identity. And I think Hurzeler wants his team to have an identity, and that's what Andrew's imprinted on Spurs. And yes, we've started seeing a few adaptations, but last season, every game was just about instilling that philosophy. And I feel like Hurzeler wants to do that at Brighton. So I reckon he's probably going to stick with how he wants to play. However, I've also read up a bit about him, and apparently he is quite an adaptable manager, and he does like to adapt to a few things. So maybe he'll do that on Sunday. The reality is, we can only really go on what we've seen of him at Brighton, and he's done the same thing every game pretty much, tried to play the same way, even regardless of the opposition. So I assume he's going to go on that way. Is there a chance he catches us cold and switches things up, maybe a formation change or whatever? Possibly. I wouldn't be surprised, because he's a kind of manager who can be quite adaptable in time. But I think just because it's the early stage of his career in Brighton, and it's still near the beginning of the season, I assume he's still imprinting that kind of structure onto the players, so he's probably going to stick with it. But
yeah, that's the way I'm feeling, and that's why I think it's actually a really good time to come up against them. And I feel like if it was a bit later in his tenure, maybe later on in the season, maybe in the reverse fixture, or even looking forward to next season, something like that, he could make those adaptable changes. But because it's just like the seventh game in the Premier League of his tenure, I do think, I agree with you, he's going to stick with his guns, and I think that's going to play into our hands. I really do.
I think the crucial thing here to win the game, obviously breaking the high line is going to be important, but I think winning that midfield battle, gaining control of that, is going to be super important, because if Brighton start controlling that midfield and start outnumbering us, because look, they also like to commit players forward, they like to exploit the spaces we leave behind, and if we allow them time and space on the ball and allow them to control that midfield, then all of a sudden we are going to be in trouble. All of a sudden they will be able to find their forward line, because they got good forward line, they got good midfield players, and they got also fullbacks who are technically, and if you give them time and space, they will be able to pick out their man, and we'll be able to get the ball forward, and they were going to be able to play through us. So it's going to be super crucial. I feel like Bentancur, Maddison, Kulusevski are just on top of them, making sure that they're breaking up their play, making sure they're being disruptive. Because if they're not doing that, then all of a sudden we will be unstuck, and we will be finding Brighton playing through us more often than not. So those three players have a big job in their hands. It's going to be a lot tougher, in my opinion, than it was against Man United for them to dominate, because of Brighton are more focused on their patterns of play and their build-up and keeping possession. And Man United struggle with that a lot, and that's why we're able to just win the ball back off them so often. Brighton is going to be a lot more difficult, but having said that, we're a great pressing team. That's a really good weapon we have in our armoury. Even teams like Arsenal struggled with our pressing. So, and they're a great build-up team. So if we can be on point with our pressing, just making sure we're disrupting them as much as possible, and then we saw that they leave gaps at the back, I think that's the way to win the game. So we have to make sure that midfield three are just making sure they're dominating, winning their duels, and that's super important.
And you look at the midfield, which we're probably going to play, it will probably be Bentancur, Maddison, Kulusevski, who are all masters at keeping the ball. You're looking at the way we're pressing at the moment, like you say, the best pressing team in the league, if you're looking at the statistics. And I know Dunk and Webster, both in their own right, are fairly good players on the ball. But I do feel like we can kind of press them into submission a bit here, and we can. We're going to be absolutely ruthless in our pressing. And not only are we a good pressing team, but we're playing with high confidence at the moment, and I think that's going to play into our hands massively. And you're looking at the team selection that we have, the headaches that we have. I think the team pretty much picks itself, apart from one position, and that is Timo Werner or Mikey Moore. We know Sonny, I mean, he might make it, but he probably won't. I think even if he is fit for this game, I do think they leave him out and potentially on the bench. So I do think it's between Timo Werner or Mikey Moore. Mikey put in an unbelievable performance in the Europa League, played 90 minutes. Timo, I think he came off after the 70th minute or something. Maybe that was in view for the game this weekend. But we know what Timo brings you. He is a threat in behind. He's got unbelievable pace, and he can kind of hurt this Brighton team. But when he gets in those positions, he is ultimately very, very frustrating. In my personal opinion, I would want to see Mikey Moore start this game. I know what people are saying about we need to be careful with him, and he's a young player, we don't want to overplay him and stuff like that. But I don't really think that really comes into it, because there's an international break after this. Sonny's not in the international team for Korea going into the break. So Sonny will be back after the international break. They're saying it's a precaution. So Sonny will be back on the left wing after the international break comes back. So I think just for this one game, or one game alone, we should be starting Mikey Moore. He's got quality. I feel he can get in behind, maybe not as well as Timo Werner, but he's great in his one-on-one dribbling as well on the ball. So I think he can beat his fullback to a regularity. And I think he'll have more quality and be a lot less frustrating than Timo Werner in the final third.
That's probably true. But what I think we will play Werner, and I
agree we will.
And I think it's the right decision, because I think when you're coming up against look, if they are going to play like they did, let's assume they're going to play like they did against Chelsea. If they are going to play that line, we need someone who can just constantly be getting in behind time and time again, like ruthlessly. And if you're going to do that, this is basically the perfect game for someone like Werner. If you're going to have Werner in part of your squad, you play him in this sort of game, because this is basically the game where he can get the most joy.
What's the point, though, if he's so frustrating in the final third, and he's not hurting teams really?
But he's getting chances.
He's getting there, but what's he doing with these chances?
Will Moore be able to get those chances?
100% he will.
I don't know.
Of course he will.
I don't think that's guaranteed.
Of course he will.
Moore is a good player. I think he's more of a ball-to-feet dribbler. He likes the ball-to-feet to take people on. I haven't seen too many times this season so far when he's been on. This isn't a criticism. This is just a stylistic thing. I haven't seen too many times so far where he's been able to run in behind and run away from people. I've seen that.
The sample size is very small.
Correct, but I still haven't seen it. We know Timo Werner. That's what he does. That's his modus operandi. That's like his bread and butter. That's how he plays. He's brilliant at timing his runs. He's brilliant at using. He's a really good tactical player. He knows when to run, and he's really good at running in behind. And we're going to need that in this game.
But what use is it getting in behind if you can't finish your dinner?
because he can just lay it off as Brendan Johnson. Or how many times did Chelsea get him behind? It was a 2-on-1. So many times. He doesn't have to finish. And look, if he gets him behind, 6, 7, 8 times in the game, one of them he'll pull off something. He will.
You'd hope so.
Look, he's done it before in his career. He's not like he's never scored a goal in his career. He's done it. He's not like he's got a few assists while he's been in the Tottenham shirt. Yes, last 2 games, don't get me wrong, massively frustrating that he's missed those
All
chances.
season.
Yeah, I'm saying last couple of games mainly when he started, he's had those chances and he missed them. But he's getting those positions. If we keep getting in those positions, I'm confident it will start to come off for him at some point. He will get something. If especially against a team like, I'm not saying Werner's the best player in the world or anything like that, or he's even a good finisher. I know he's not. I know he can be frustrating in the final third. But my point is, if we can just keep getting him behind, right, and if we keep getting Timo Werner in that position, if we can get basically those chances he got against Man United, if he's getting, instead of 2, if he's getting 5 or 6, that's what's possible against this Brighton team. The way they play is my point. If we play Mikey Moore, he might get 1 or 2, and I'm not saying he won't get him. He's not going to have a sniff or anything, because he's a very good player. I'm sure he'll create chances for himself. I'm sure he's he might be able to get him behind once or twice. I'm just saying, from what I've seen, there was one time against Man United, he was put in behind and the defender caught up with him. There was one time against Ferencvaros, who he got in behind and the defender caught up with him. That Timo Werner, that's less likely to happen with Timo Werner. If he gets in behind, he's getting in. He's not getting caught up because he's very, very quick and he's very good at timing his runs. I'm more at the stage of his career where he's at 17. Clearly, he's physically well above for his age group and he's really, really impressive. But this is Premier League football. We need someone who's going to be able to get away from his defender when they're in behind, not just once or twice, but like time and time again in this kind of game. And that's why I'm suggesting that Timo Werner is actually better suited for this type of game than Mikey Moore is right now. But of course, if Werner is frustrating and he just gets in behind, or he doesn't even, either he's not getting in behind or he's missing loads of chances and we're losing or whatever, and he's being frustrating, then we've always got Mikey Moore to come on and he can maybe win us the game or whatever. But I think from the start, I actually think this is just the perfect game for Werner. If we're going to have Werner here, I think this is the kind of game we have to play him in.
I think he will play. I do think Ange will go with Timo, but I would just love to see Mikey play in this game because he's going to have the space to operate in. I don't think it's a case of, Mikey plays, he only gets 1 or 2 chances. I think he's going to be a constant threat down that left-hand side if he plays. And he's got the dual threat as well as Timo does, with Brennan Johnson, who's going to be constantly getting in behind as well. So when you're talking about that constant threat in behind that Timo brings, Brennan does also bring that. And I think that Mikey Moore can also bring that as well. Yes, maybe we haven't seen it because he hasn't been on the pitch anywhere near as enough times to see it. But I saw that game against Manchester United, and he always hanging on that fullback, looking for those runs in behind. And there was plenty of times where our attacking players didn't find him in behind where they could have done. And against a high line that Brighton are going to play, he's going to find those opportunities in behind constantly, time and time again. I genuinely believe that. And I think if Moore plays this game, if he starts this game, he will score.
That's big words.
He will. He'll get the moments and he'll score 100%. 100%.
100%.
If Moore starts,
I'm
he'll
not
score.
as confident as that. I like Moore. Don't get me wrong. I think it was excellent yesterday. But, are we at a stage where he's guaranteed to score in a Premier League match? I don't think we're there yet.
When maybe not any Premier League game, but this game where he's going to have
Brighton
a lot.
are a good team.
Yeah, I know Brighton are a good team, but they're going to leave bundles and bundles and bundles of space. And I think, as well as what you're saying about if this is the perfect game for Timo Werner, I also feel like it could be a really good game for Mikey Moore to make his Premier League debut in.
I think he would do well. Don't get me wrong. I'd be excited if he started, and I'd really be interested to see how he would get on. I just know that I know for a fact, if pretty much anyway, that if Timo Werner starts, he'll get at least 3 or 4 opportunities. If this is a caveat, if they play like they did, have they been playing all season, and like they played against Chelsea, if they play like that, Werner will at least 3 or 4 opportunities be getting in behind and will be exploring that space because he knows how to do it. He's done it his whole career. That is what he's amazing at.
But what else do you know is a fact is that he's going to be ultimately very frustrating.
He might be, but he also might come up with something. And I think it's a safer bet that he would, rather than that Mikey Moore, whether he would be up to exploring the space as much as Werner could. I think
The reality is that if either of them play, I think both of them will get a lot of chances in this game. That's the reality.
Yeah, but I think, look, don't want to focus too much because the game's not going to be on a loss whether it's Werner or Moore. It's going to be more about how the team operates, about the midfield. It's going to be whether they can dominate, making sure that if they do, the chances they put over the top, Van der Ven's mopping them up and making sure that Welbeck's not getting any joy, and making sure that, because with every time we mop up their balls over the top, their pass over the top, and we're sweeping up, that's another opportunity for us to hit them.
It's about cutting those supply lines to Danny Welbeck, and I think Romero stepping out from the defence into the midfield will be doing that on a constant basis.
I think just making sure we're not leaving Matoma one-on-one, and we're not giving him, because we were actually really good at doing that against Man United, making sure Rashford didn't get too many opportunities to run at Porro, and the very few he did, Porro did deal with them, but luckily Porro only had to deal with it maybe once or twice
and
in the
game. And a few times that he beat Porro, I mean, he was offside, wasn't he?
There was one time he beat him, it was offside, but that was from a long ball from Onana. But I think the game plan for Man United was to basically win the ball back low and spring on us and get Rashford in a one-on-one situation with Porro. Luckily for us, we were really good at just preventing those situations. I think it only happened once, and Porro dealt with it. Now, the problem is, if Rashford had 5 or 6 or 7 opportunities to do that, he might have got a bit more joy. So we have to make sure we're stopping them getting the ball out to Mitoma, where he's able to run at Porro and exploit that space. Because if we allow them, Mitoma's one of the best dribblers in the league. And however good Porro is, and I love Porro, if he's going to have to be sized up one-on-one against Mitoma 5, 6 or 7 times in the game, Mitoma's going to have some joy. Guaranteed. So we have to make sure that we have to limiting Mitoma's influence as much as possible. They've got another player on the right-hand side called Minte. He's had a great start.
Brilliant.
He's looked really good early on as well. Just make sure that we're stopping those supply lines to the wingers and making sure that, yes, it probably will happen once or twice, but limit it as much as possible. Make sure they're not getting as much opportunity to run at our fullbacks as possible. And if we can do that, I think we will get the joy, because I think we will be able to get in their high line. And I guess if you're a Brighton fan, you'll be saying the same. Well, we can get in their high line, we can get in behind their space, and all the same stuff. But the difference is we have Van der Ven. And that's the big difference, because he is such a physical specimen.
He got the X factor.
Exactly. If they play a pass in behind, right, running in on our goal, there are just so many passes that Van der Ven is going to be able to sweep up in those scenarios, which Duncan Webster aren't in the similar scenario, and that could be the key difference here.
I'm looking at it, and I feel like with Brighton right now, they're just conceding so many goals, and I think Spurs should be licking their lips coming up against this Brighton team right now with the form that they're in the early stages of a Hurzeler team. They conceded 4 to Chelsea last week, 2 to Nottingham Forest the week before, 2 to Wolves in the Cup. They kept a clean sheet against Ipswich and 1 goal against Arsenal, where Arsenal had many a chance to get more in the back of the net. So we should be really licking our lips and properly fancy our chances coming into it this weekend.
Definitely, if we back ourselves to be as far down the line as the recent performances have maybe suggested, we're getting to a stage where the team's really coming together. They're still very early in their project. At Brighton, it's a new project anyway. 7 games into Hertz's managerial career at Brighton. So we should really be the ones more settled. We should really be the ones who've really perfected how we want to play rather than they do. Don't get me wrong, because they've had De Zerbi and Potter beforehand, they're probably more adept to playing the way Hurzer wants to, more than we were when Ange first came in, right? Because Ange had to completely switch up how we were playing. Hurzer doesn't have to completely do that, because they were playing quite attacking football under previous managers anyway. So it's not the biggest change like it was under Ange, but the changes he has made at Brighton, they still need to adapt to those. And whereas we're a bit further down our line in our project, and we should be further down. So for sure, we should be going into this game confident we can win, confident we can exploit them, and confident that and just confident in our way of playing more than they are. That, and also not just that, but also the pieces we have in place should be a lot more, if for the right profiles than they are. For example, like Webster and Dunk, will they struggle with balls in behind rather than people players like Van der Ven and Romero, which I'll back to clear a lot more. Not to say they won't be caught out, I'm sure they might be, but are they going to be caught out a lot less than Brighton will be caught out? That's the aim of the game here. So I think that should lead to some good results. So that's why I'm confident. But they are a very good footballing team, and on their day, they can go toe-to-toe with a lot of good teams. We've seen it down the years. Brighton against big teams like Liverpool at Anfield and City and Arsenal. They can go toe-to-toe with them if they're on their game. And that's something to be very, very wary of. That's why out of possession, we need to be absolutely aggressive and ruthless, because if we're off our game and we allow them to play their stuff, we could get unstuck for sure.
And that will happen, because there hasn't been one game this season, barring maybe the Coventry game, where we haven't been absolutely bang at it, really aggressive, really on point with our pressing. We've been like that every single game this season. So if we carry on in that mold, I have no doubt about it, we're going to win this game.
And actually, there'll be, if we don't even play over the top and in behind, one crucial thing we have in our arsenal is Dominic Solanke.
We don't have an arsenal.
In our weaponry, whatever. One thing we have is Dominic Solanke, and that means we can go direct to him and he can hold the ball up. And if they're playing a high line and we can and they're obviously probably going to press, because they try to press as well. If we can just outdo their press and go straight to Solanke and he can hold the ball up, all of a sudden that opens up all kinds of spaces. And because he's such a physical specimen in how he competes with centre backs, I can see Dunk and Webster really struggling with him. Whereas, do they have that threat with Welbeck? Like, if they go direct to Welbeck, I would back Van der Ven around to deal with that 9 times out of 10. Would I back Webster and Dunk to deal with Solanke? Not as many times, in my opinion. So that's another way I think we could really make do with that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Vicario, when we play out the back, goes straight to Solanke more than we see in other games, in my opinion.
It is a very tough ground, though, to go to, the Amex, isn't it? We've tasted it time and time again, all the way back to that 3-0. Was it when Lloris broke his arm in that game? We were sitting right behind the goal. Literally, we could hear Lloris screaming. And then we lost 1-0 the year after that. Then we did have 2 wins against them in 2 years consecutively. But last year was a bit of an embarrassment, wasn't it? For the most part. I mean, we did nearly come back in it in the second half. We had enough chances. We had enough chances to get back in it, didn't we?
We did. It was 4-0, and we got what looked like a late consolation. I think was it from Ben Davis, or was it from
Ben Davis? Yeah,
Ben Davis. Then all of a sudden we got another goal.
No, it was Valise.
So Valise gets it back to 4-1. Then all of a sudden Davis 4-2. Then I think Hojbjerg hit the post, and then we had a few other openings. It looked like actually we made a really late rally, and we could have made it 4-4 if luck was on our side. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But you read out our team that day. I bet you it was a very mix and match.
It was a really weak team for Spurs. It was Vicario in goal, Porro right back, Udogie left back, Davis and Emerson in centre back.
Emerson! Oh my God, he was so bad that day.
Sarr, Hojbjerg, Kulusevski in the midfield, and Johnson, Son, and Richarlison.
So very weak, especially the back line, which really hurt us that day. We're coming into this game with especially the back line midfield near fully fit. And the front line have been on form in the last few days.
And they had Van Hecke, by the way, in that game as well.
And Van Hecke's out, exactly. And no João Pedro as well. He's out in this game.
And he scored 2 that day.
He was brilliant. He gave us all sorts of trouble. So
Estepinian, didn't he score that blind? Was that day? Estepinian's blinder?
30 yards. Yeah, he's playing. He's fit again.
He's back, but he doesn't seem anywhere near the player that he was before this injury.
Yeah, it's a shame. We'll see how he plays, how he comes back. But yeah. So they're weaker probably than last year. We're a lot stronger than last year. So hopefully that leads to some good results. But, it's just always going away from home. You can look at tactics and look at all these different things, how we can hurt them. And for sure, if you look at that probably goes in our favour. But always away from home, you always have to be up for it. Always the home crowd's going to be. There's a reason why there's home advantage, and there's too many times where we've gone away to a team where you think we should win, and we just turn up with a meek performance, and the players aren't on it, and for one reason or other, it's just not there, and we're weak, and physically we're not there, and we are coming back from Hungary, and players are going to be tired, so we have to make sure that we're on our game, we're fresh for this game, we're from minute 1, we're on their case, pressing, hounding them, just breaking up their play. And as long as we stop them from playing, I'm certain that we're going to have more joy playing through them than they will us. I really am.
It seems like there's just this different kind of vibe and aura about Spurs this season. Even when we weren't winning, at the start of the season, when we drew against Leicester, we lost against Newcastle, there's still this different kind of atmosphere within the squad where they're just so much more energetic, they're so much more dangerous, they're so much more physical with the opposition. And I feel like just if we can keep that same kind of aura and that same kind of vibe going into this game, I think we win it.
Yeah, and I think going away, all the last 2 games have been away, and we've won, well. I think those experiences will help stand us in good stead because our away form hasn't been good, but like for a while before Old Trafford, we were really struggling.
But all our away performances this year have been good.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like the fact that we got that win is big. It's a big psychologically because now we have that experience of going away, dominating, like being really physical, like asserting ourselves on the opposition away from home and getting a big win. That breeds confidence. That shows the rest of the team this way of playing away from home will work and it can breed results. And hopefully that can really help us going into Sunday.
All right, score prediction time. Are you keeping with your same prediction?
I said 3-1 Spurs.
3-1 Spurs,
3-1
keeping with it.
I'm keeping with it.
I said 3-2. Yeah, I think I'll keep with it. I think it's going to be a crazy game of football. I really do. I think it's going to be end to end. I do think we're going to have the better of it at the end because we are the form team coming into it. We do have the better players, in my opinion, and we're just that much further along in the project than what Brighton are. So I do think Brighton do have the capabilities to hurt us, and I think they will in certain moments in the game. But I do think quality in the end will shine through. I got a feeling that Spurs are going to have a lot of chances this game, but are we going to make the most out of all the chances that we do have? We've seen on pretty much every game that we've had this season that we haven't been as clinical as maybe we should be. It is getting better. It is getting better as the season progresses. So I still think we can score quite a few goals, maybe even get 4 goals. But I'm going to say,
what was it, 11 goals in the last 4?
Yeah, so it's definitely getting better. When you look at the first few games of the season, the Leicester game, the Newcastle game, the Arsenal game, Everton game, obviously we scored 4 goals that day. We probably could have had 5 or 6 in that game. So every game that we've played this season, you're probably thinking about it like we could have scored a lot more goals than we actually did. The Brentford game, we could have scored many more goals. The Man United game, we could have scored 6 or 7 in that day.
But I think the key will be, even if we are missing chances, don't get too frustrated with it because more chances will come and you have to back us to keep creating. And that was what we did really well at Man United. And then Ange pointed that out.
Yeah.
He said he felt like in other games we missed and it affected us and we started rushing other chances because, we felt like will these more chances come. But against United, we missed, but just stay calm because we know we're good enough to create more. And against Brighton, we definitely are. And this game could be anything. It really could. Yeah. Should be a really open, exciting game. So I'm really, really excited to see the game on Sunday.
Yeah. And me and Sim will be going down to the Amex on Sunday for the 4:30 kickoff. You got Barnaby and Luke with you in the watch along, so come and join them for the very exciting game. Both of us are predicting Spurs wins going into it. And how nice is it just to sit on these match previews and have a bit of confidence about us?
I will see on Monday.
It's been a long.
We'll see on Monday.
That's a match review though. I'm talking about the previews.
I'm saying I'll see if we'll see on Monday if it was justified.
Yeah, we will.
How many times have we gone in confident it bites us in the arse?
Yeah. We spoke to, I think it was Donovan that called into the fan show after the game yesterday, and he was like, there's too many confident Spurs fans around. I don't like it.
It happens every time. When we're too confident, something bad happens.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Well, we'll probably lose the game then. No, I'm joking. I think we're going there to the Amex for 3 points. Let me know your score predictions in the comment section below. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.